Welcome to the Alchemy of Healing podcast. I'm your host, Erica Carroll. For over 20 years, I worked as an actress in film and TV, until my health forced its way to center stage and demanded I focus on the alchemical process that is healing. Along the way, I had to examine preconceived beliefs around how to optimize my body and how to empower myself to find solutions. I know how lonely, isolating, and hopeless chronic illness can feel. And the Alchemy of Healing sessions aim to enlighten and inspire new ideas to help you find your unique path back to wellness. So join me while I speak with experts in diverse fields of self-care, practitioners, biohackers, healers, and folks like you, who are the true experts of their own bodies, sharing their personal stories of how they transmuted from surviving to thriving. What do you do when your life has changed in such a significant way that you feel utterly lost and disoriented? Whether it's due to an illness, a sudden loss, or some other profound change in your life, you may be feeling disconnected from others and yourself. Maybe you're grieving the life you once had, or maybe you're grieving the loss of unfulfilled dreams, or can't even imagine what your future may hold. Regardless of the reason, if you have a moment to sit with yourself, you get the sense something is amiss and that you are in need of some guidance to help connect you to who and what you are. Alana Joy is a reconnection coach, speaker, and lifelong healer. She's been a helping professional for over 20 years, working first as a nurse and a psychotherapist. Her personal experience of chronic illness, death, and divorce catalyzed profound physical, emotional, and spiritual healing. Weaving her deep understanding of the body, heart, and soul, Alana Joy's work bridges science and spirituality to integrate all parts of the human experience. Alana is on a mission to guide as many as possible through the process of excavating their authentic self and connecting with a renewed sense of purpose and joy. And today, we are delighted to be able to support her on that mission as we sit down to discuss her journey and her insights. So here we go. Miss Alana Joy Newton. Okay, my friend. Let's get this party started. So hello, Alana Joy Newton. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here, Erica.
Can we start by giving listeners a little backstory on where you come from, what inspired you to transition from nursing, psychotherapy, and eventually into reconnection coaching?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, where I came from. My mind went somewhere else with that question initially. Where I came from in this human life, right there.
In this incarnation.
Yeah,
Let's go with that.
In this incarnation. So, okay, I'll put my professional hat on first.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've always felt drawn to helping others, helping beings. In my family, that was my role. That was my role. I have 3 older brothers, and I was kind of the emotional caretaker, mostly of my mother. Yeah. And so I really, it was simultaneously a burden and a gift. And nature or nurture, did I become nurturing because because I was expected to, or was I in that role because I was nurturing? Who knows? Both, maybe. Yeah. But so I, had very early experiences of providing, emotional support and being very emotionally attuned to people in my family. And so as I was choosing my professional path, my mom, who was also a nurse, very strongly influenced me to take that path as well. And I had different ideas, still in the helping realm, not exactly nursing, but practically speaking, it seemed like a good idea. So I entered nursing at 17 and graduated at 20. So I was a registered nurse by the time I was 20.
That's insane. Yeah.
Pretty insane, right?
Yeah.
Pretty insane. And I really did love it. I really thrived. I never thought of myself as a student, as an academic. My grades in high school were okay, but in nursing school, I really thrived. I loved it. So I continued on that path, and I worked as a nurse. Well, in total, it ended up being 16 years that I worked as a nurse, and lots of different areas.
When you say you worked as a nurse, sorry, was that in like in the hospital, in public health, or?
Yeah. So I moved around. I started my career in acute care, actually in cardiology, acute care, like cardiac, but then I moved to acute care neuroscience. So head injuries, strokes, brain tumors. So very heavy, emotionally heavy and physically heavy work. And
you're in your early 20s.
I was 20.
Yeah. Wow.
I was 20. I was just a baby, right?
Yeah.
Doing
Like
some
your life experience is pretty limited, and even just the tools for navigating the emotions
exactly
you would experience dealing with those kind of patients. That's heavy.
It matured me very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had some degree of maturity, perhaps with my emotional experiences with my family, I had some emotional maturity maybe beyond my years, but then going into nursing at 20 and being in life and death situations, holding people's hands as they take their last breath and trying to revive them, So I had these experiences early on. And what I was really drawn to was providing more emotional support to them. And because in that area of nursing, the patients are so physically unwell, and often nonverbal, like there's not, and of course, even with the nonverbal patients, I would emotionally connect to the best of my ability, but my focus was to keep them physically alive. Like it wasn't really there for the emotional support, which is really, as the longer I was there, I came to know that that's really who I am. That's really what I wanted to be able to provide. And in parallel, my body was saying, I didn't hear it so clearly at the time. In hindsight, it's crystal clear. But at the time, my body was starting to whisper and say, like, I can't keep doing this kind of work. It was very, very heavy, physically very heavy, and then the shift work and the, like, not even having the autonomy to eat when I want to eat, or almost like pee when I want to pee. Like it was just, I mean, because it's high acuity and you got to trade off your shifts with your partner. And like, it's so, my body was saying, I can't keep doing this. I need to have a little bit more autonomy over my body. And my body was kind of, there's a whole history with my health condition, but my body was having some symptoms at the time. Yeah.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but I grew up Roman Catholic and almost resistant to the whole notion of spirit or any of this kind of stuff. It wasn't actually until I got into acting and I started to experience this energy exchange. Like I became aware of this other layer of consciousness.
Yeah.
Did you start to recognize that there was something much more going on? Like, how do you go into nursing and not go, oh, there's a lot more going on than the physical? Did you, were you starting to see that, or did you already have that before you got into nursing?
This is a really good question. And similar to you, I had grown up without any sort of template, religious, spiritual, anything. And if anything, almost an aversion to it. My family was very academic, very scientific, very much in their head. And so if it logically couldn't be proven, if it scientifically it couldn't be proven, if it didn't make sense, then it didn't exist. And so that was kind of the message. That's the message I got in my upbringing. My siblings may or may not agree, but that was the message I got. And so I had very little, okay, this is not entirely true. I was going to say I had very little spiritual connection, but that's not true. I did have spiritual connection from the moment of birth and beyond, and I had glimpses of it, but I shut it down and I disconnected from it because there wasn't a language or a way of speaking about it in my environment.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then going into nursing and being like up front and center with life and death experiences, I felt it. I'm more of kind of like a kinesthetic, like I feel energy. I sometimes see it too, but I more feel it. And so I absolutely felt the presence of souls coming and going. And so I still, I mean, there were seeds of my waking up, but I still wasn't fully woken up to my own soul self at that time.
And that's the beauty of, and why I love getting older.
Yeah.
You can look back and you can see it so much clearer. You can see those dots connecting. You're like, oh, that time, that's what that was, and that time, and that time. And that's the beauty of being young too, because there's a freedom in the ignorance that you have.
Right.
But looking back, you're just like, oh, it was there all along. Oh, that's what that was. That's what that sensation was. That's what that,
Yes.
This will tie into another question, but please carry on from the nursing.
Just when you were saying, I just want to share something that came to mind, like Hansel and Gretel, like the breadcrumbs, right? And it's like,
totally.
Right? The breadcrumbs back to our own soul. So our whole life, we're dropping these crumbs,
Exactly.
and it just guides us back home.
And it does make it makes the notion of reincarnation and sacred contracts, like before you entered into this life, it does make it seem a little bit more plausible, because you're just like, I mean, this fit together, this puzzle piece fit together. So, I mean, it's hard to believe that it isn't premeditated in some way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. But if you had told me that when I was 20,
yeah, me too.
I'm like, that's whatever. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so you're in the nursing, and then you were getting nudges that you wanted to branch out. So
so getting nudges from body, getting nudges from my realizing now soul that I'm here to support people emotionally. Yeah. And so then, I was still pretty young, and I thought I'll just go back to school. And I did dabble in psychiatric nursing a little bit, but it just didn't quite meet my heart. And so then I went back and did my master's in counseling psychology, and so opened up the emotional world, which actually opened up a lot of my own emotional healing. I mean, I probably saw my first counselor when I was 17. So I was familiar with therapy, with counseling as a client, and I had provided peer support. Like, so that it's not that emotions were totally foreign to me, but when I engaged in the master's program, that so much, a big part of the program is doing our own work. So that really opened me up a lot more to my emotional self, which I had cut off a lot out of necessity, as so many do. And so then I pivoted. Then I bridged the two careers for a little while. And then
the nursing and the therapy.
Yeah. So I completed my master's. I was working as a counselor and as a nurse, kind of, one day to the next, I was a different role and so I was a bit scattered, and I just couldn't kind of keep up the hours for licensure for nurse. I had to choose. And so I just listened to my body. I mean, and my heart and my soul, but I listened to my being, and I focused exclusively on the counseling. So
So when it comes to licenses, you have to have a certain amount of hours for each thing.
Well, for nursing, you need a certain number of hours to hold the registration. Counseling at this time is a little bit less structured. But I knew that's where I was I knew that's where I was being called into anyways. So there was some grief. There were aspects of nursing that I really love, I still miss. And this is my path.
This is a very basic question, but what is the difference between a counselor, a psychologist, and a psychotherapist?
It's not a basic. Actually, it's way more
very
complicated.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And it depends on what country you're in, what province you're in, what title is owned by. So it's I refer to myself as a psychotherapist because I go deep with clients. Counseling, I think, can often be, or is often regarded as, a little bit higher level, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's just how I've understood it, and I just identify more with the title psychotherapist because I go into the psyche,
and then a psychologist, and then there's a psychiatrist.
Okay, so then those differences are more distinct. So a psychologist is someone with a PhD in psychology, and psychology degrees. There's lots of research, some clinical work. I mean, maybe I don't know the programs well enough. So there's research and clinical and it's a PhD level to become a psychologist. To
Okay.
become a counselor here in BC, it's a master's level. Well, yeah, there are lots of people that call themselves counselors and don't have a master's. Anyway, so
Got it.
the title's not
Yeah.
regulated.
Yeah, it's just it's important. I think, there were times that I just went to therapists and I didn't even look to see. I was like, whatever, this person's a counselor. This person's a, not knowing the difference between them and just being younger and not feeling entitled to ask. I've worked on
Right?
that. But
Yeah.
I bring this point up for those listening who have never gone to therapy and who feel as if, you don't have, sometimes it's so when people have higher education, you can feel like you don't feel entitled to just
Mhm.
ask for what you need. And that could be just the information on what are your credentials. And,
Yeah.
and it can be really dangerous if people are just trusting any random person. So anyway,
Sure.
I just wanted to touch on that point of,
It's important.
it's important to know who you are seeing and just that you will be safe with these people.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on that because a lot of people don't know the difference.
I think it's really important, and it takes me down another path, which maybe we go down it or maybe we don't. But just what you were saying about when someone has credentials, we're maybe less likely to ask questions,
Exactly.
And I think that could be an individual thing, but I think it's also a societal thing that we've been conditioned to believe that they're experts, and if we don't have titles, letters after our name, then we don't know. We can't even talk about that thing. Yeah. So this is when I think about my health and the conditions I've been diagnosed with, and, there's some friction there, because I do believe I am the expert of my own body. There's no one with fancy letters after their name that knows more about my body than I do. So I think that there is this conditioned belief with medicine and likely other professions that, we little minions don't know, and that we need to outsource that wisdom to someone else. Yeah.
And I think the gift of the journey of having health issues is you learn that first you have to recognize that you gave your authority away in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you have to regain it.
Yeah.
And then have the confidence to be, like, as you said, I'm the expert of my experience. I think back on 20 years of misdiagnoses, and I literally had some of the most bizarre comments come from professionals. Like, very strange. And yet it took me time to, you don't want to come in and just be an argumentative person. I'm sure there's a lot of doctors who also come up against that. But when you get mistreated, misunderstood, and all these things for so long, and you finally get your power back. And I think that's part of why we go through these journeys, is because, there are those parts of you that need to be reconnected. Oh, look at a segue. So talk to me about what a reconnection coach is. And how did you arrive here? How are you drawn to this, knowing that this is where you're supposed to be? And I can tell, I've listened to some of your other interviews and we've talked, obviously, and I can tell that it brings you so much peace and joy. So I want to give me the juice on this.
I'll give you the juice. So growing up, I had many different experiences in my body, different health experiences, different conditions and diagnoses, etc. And it's quite different, like really stood apart from my peers with some of the things I experienced in my body. And I'm going to share one of the things I experienced because it does relate to being a reconnection coach. So when I was 12, I had a minor fall off my bike, and like super minor, like I wasn't going fast. It was just really super minor fall. And I fractured my wrist and bruised my hip and, kind of banged up a little bit. Not apparently, obviously super injured, but yeah. So cast on, cast off, wrist recovered, but I still had pain in my hip, and I was limping for it was months actually, and it was just kind of disregarded as can't see anything, so nothing's happening. It's fine. Everything looks fine. And then, and I was told in my family that No, I was implicitly and explicitly told that it was attention-seeking behavior. So I just learned to disconnect from what I knew to be the truth in my body. This pain that I was experiencing, I was seriously limping. I couldn't help it. Like there was something going on. I couldn't help but limp. And, but I was being told it wasn't true or there wasn't, so I disconnected from that. I guess it got to a point where it was just really hard to ignore. And, I went to the family doctor. My hips were x-rayed and it was shown that I had this condition where basically the growth plate of the head of my femur was slipping off.
Ooh.
And super rare condition, not usually happens with overweight 12-year-old boys, which I was 12. That was the only thing I was.
That was the only similarity.
That was the only thing. And so anyway, super rare condition. I ended up, anyways, my spine was, I had a curvy spine, had scoliosis because of the hips. So all this stuff was going on. I was referred to an orthopedist. And then in waiting for that referral, I fell again. And that time severed the head of the femur off. Yeah.
Ooh.
Which severed the blood supply, which means femur then has no blood supply. And so this was a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. And I'll fast forward the story a little bit. But so literally like my head of my femur, my hip fell apart. It disconnected. And there was a risk that I would never walk again. I didn't quite know this totally at the time. But in hushed conversations, I kind of picked it up. Anyways, long recovery period, miraculously, and I'm realizing now in adult life how much of a miracle it actually was, that the blood supply did regrow. And partly because I didn't follow doctor's orders, to be honest. I weight bared when I shouldn't have, but I think that's partly why it regrew. But anyways, miraculously, it regrew. And I have pins in my hips that, tell the story of what happened there. And I have arthritis in my hips because of all that. But the point is, my body disconnected. So fast forward, few instances, similar weird and wacky instances of health experiences throughout my life, kind of muddle through. I have my son, tough pregnancy in that things were falling apart. My pelvis was falling apart. My veins were bloating out, like things were falling apart. And then I started seeing things in him. I was like, what's going on? He's kind of floppy. He's kind of lethargic. He's kind of tired. He's got a hernia. It's kind of, So fast forward that story. My son and I, with my persistence, my son and I both got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic connective tissue disorder. So connection, there's that word. So it's a disorder of the connective tissue, the glue that holds the body together. And I know you know about this, and I'm sharing a bit more information for the listeners. Yeah. So
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is not, there's not a lot of awareness around it, but there's actually a lot more of it than people. Like, if people were more aware, then they might know that they are actually exhibiting responses in their body. Yeah.
And because there's such a wide range of, the degree of how people are affected, people can live their whole lives and not know that they have it. And great, maybe it doesn't matter, but for some people, the symptoms are more severe. And for some, they're very severe. And, so anyhow, so we were diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder. So that hit me pretty significantly. Like, what does this mean for my life? Even though I was a nurse, I had a healthcare background. I hadn't received any education in EDS. And so, I was still kind of learning about it and what this meant, and seeing that there was a wide range of, how much wide range of disability. I didn't know what this meant for my life or my son's life. So understandably, there was some fear, anxiety, grief. So I was kind of recalibrating, trying to make some sense of that. And then in that kind of time frame, within a few years of being diagnosed, my dad died, not of EDS, although I do suspect he had it. But, his death coupled with my diagnosis just really sent me down this spiral of this veil of certainty that we have in life, right? Like, we think things are certain, but they're really not. So that veil had been ripped back. And when my dad just, kind of his parting words before he passed away were, life is for living. And so I was like, it might sound obvious, but I wasn't living, really. I wasn't living me. I wasn't living my life. I didn't really know that at the time, but I was living the life that, I don't know, not to say there weren't parts of my life that I absolutely loved and connected with, but there were also parts of my life that I'm doing the thing because I think that's the thing I'm supposed to do to be accepted in my family and society, etc.
Yeah.
So all that fell away. And I knew that I had to reconnect. And so this diagnosis, the gift of the name of the diagnosis, well, not Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that's a mouthful, but having a connective on that one. But being a connective tissue disorder, I'm like a disorder of connection. Where am I disconnected? It wasn't just in my hips, it wasn't just in my joints. It wasn't just in my pelvic floor. It wasn't, my gut. It wasn't just there. Where else am I disconnected? I was disconnected from my heart. I was disconnected from my emotions. I was disconnected from my body. I was disconnected from my soul. So
yeah. And
that's
what's
where I went.
Yeah, and it's that disconnection leads us to chronic illness. When you were a kid and you had these feelings and you had these symptoms, and then you're being told to betray your own
Yep.
sensation. On your website, you have your life is calling. Can you hear the whispers? How does one even know what a whisper is?
What's coming up for me is, it's really difficult to hear the whispers when there's so much. I just got this image of, you would know way more about this than I do. I just got this image of like a soundproof room, right? Like I'm just thinking with audio recording and acting, maybe you know something about this. I don't know anything about this, but I just got this image of like this room with all this, soundproofing material. And so you're not going to hear someone whisper on the other side, right? And so I think of that. This is the first time I've come up with this vision. So hang with me here. I think of all this like padding, all this padding, this soundproofing as the conditioning, as our conditioning that we layer on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so throughout our life, just using emotions for an example, maybe we got the message, that very common message, like girls shouldn't show anger. It's not nice. Okay. I think many people could probably relate to that to some degree or another. So let's just say, when child feels anger and they're conditioned that they shouldn't squash it. Anger is just an emotion letting us know something's not letting us know we're not safe. Anger is a very appropriate emotion when we're feeling threatened, when we're feeling attacked. But so this, child lives their life squashing that emotion. And it might come out in other ways. It might still seep out because it has to. So maybe it's anger itself. It might take the form of a depression or something. Yeah. And so I'm going kind of like high level here. But so, there's all this padding. So this conditioning of ways that we adapt to the environment because we think we're expected to be this way or that way, not that way or this way. Yeah. And so this is all the conditioning. So this conditioned self is not the true self. It's all this padding of behaviors and ways of adapting to our environment to be accepted, for belonging, for safety in our family and our communities. And so when all this padding is there, we can't hear those whispers. We can't hear those whispers because there's so much padding on top. So the process that I went through and I guide others through is, let's first get all the padding off. I can't really necessarily know what their whispers are either, until we start to get that padding off. And so, some sort of, often behaviors that are indicative that, we're squashing our soul are things like addictions. Yeah. And it might not even be a full-fledged addiction. It might be drinking every day just to kind of not feel the feelings.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's societally endorsed. So it easily gets masked as, it's a socially acceptable behavior. But I mean, this was my experience too.
Just device use. Devices,
yes.
Distractions, Netflix, chocolate.
Yes. Nutella.
Food. Nutella. Sugar,
Yes.
all of it. Yeah. There's so many things. And that's part of the thing with, we were chatting a little bit prior to just about, there's so little time now in the day where you're just sitting with yourself.
Yeah.
People are on the toilet with their phone. People are, as soon as someone's gone in to pick up the takeout order and you're sitting in the car, there's this poll. I've got to go look and see what's happening on Instagram.
Yeah.
And, you're on the SkyTrain. Everyone's there. There's so little time with yourself, and if you don't have a regular meditation or journaling or even just a friend that you can talk about how you're feeling, I mean, I grew up, I started writing at the age of 10.
Oh, wow.
And so I was I became very good at processing my feelings, and I can feel the whisper. I can feel this like almost like a constipated feeling when I've
Yes.
got these feelings. Like I can sit with myself for a second. I'm like, oof, there's an icky feeling somewhere, and then I can just go, that has to do with that conversation where I noticed this and and then I could go and process that. But when I'm out in public and I sit and I watch people, just everybody just on their devices, nobody connecting, not only with other people, which is, I mean, we are tribal beings. We need to belong to community, and nobody's getting any time with themselves. So that padding is so thick at this point,
It's so
you know?
sick.
And then they're like, why am I anxious? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so angry? It's like, anyway.
Yeah. Right. I'm so with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, alcohol is just one of them. But especially these days, social media, technology, our society offers us so many ways to pad, to numb, to disconnect. I mean, I want to say it's built by accident, but that's maybe another conversation. But
well, it isn't by
I mean, there's so much. There's so much out there to distract ourselves from our inner worlds. And then we're left with this huge void, and I've heard it been said before, maybe it was Joseph Campbell, but no, maybe not. Anyway, about having a God-sized hole. And, the term God at this point still doesn't totally resonate for me, but definitely in my process of peeling off all the padding, I have come in closer contact with a divine energy, with a creator, with a source. And that's having come from no religious background whatsoever. So when we do peel off all that padding, we come in touch with something greater, our own soul and beyond.
Yeah. I mean, when you peel off all that padding too, there's a level of vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's that, okay, because the padding on one hand is blocking the whisper, but also can be a form of protection, right?
Absolutely.
And you're pulling off like a scab and there's this sore underneath. And then, because like anyone who's gone through a health journey, an emotional journey, any of it, once you remove the thing, then that sore needs to heal. And that is still a process. Like even once you get a diagnosis, like I was going to say, like there's all these gates of awareness, it's like, I'm having these symptoms. Oh, these symptoms are real. Oh, I'm really actually in pain. Oh, pain isn't normal. Like you go, it's a whole domino effect. Then when you speak about the whispers, each time it's ignored, another domino seems to fall. And like they're smaller at the beginning, you just like, I feel a little off. And then it's, I'm dizzy once a month. And then it's, I can't walk. And then you're like, now I have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And I think that and the one thing I've learned is like, please pay attention before it's so big that you can't come back. I feel like you can always come back, but it requires a lot of skill and support.
Yeah. And what's coming up for me right now is, thinking of people with chronic illness who've been diagnosed with, various things. And, as the canaries in the coal mine, I've touched on this before, and just reminded of it again now. So many of the, the ways of being in the world that are not healthy for someone with chronic illness, it applies to everyone,
Exactly.
It applies to everyone. Chemicals, certain foods, EMF, toxic relationships, like that's really, it's just kind of for everyone. But people with chronic illness, for whatever reason, their beings have come into this world maybe a bit more tuned, a bit more sensitive. And so it develops into illness in this lifetime, but they're really just letting the rest of the world know these things are not good for us.
How are you doing with your sleep at night? Not so good? Well, let me tell you about one of the actions I incorporated into my nighttime protocol to help bring on sleep in a naturally induced way. I use the blue light blocking glasses from Bond Charge. Now, just like everything I come across, I had a healthy dose of skepticism that using just a red lens would do anything for me. So I was genuinely shocked that within an hour of wearing the glasses, I started to feel sleepy and ready to hit the hay. Now you may be wondering, why is blocking blue light important to improve your quality of sleep? Well, daylight triggers cortisol to keep you awake in the day, but as darkness falls, the red light spectrum, think setting sun, campfire, and candlelight, signals the pineal gland to prep for sleep by secreting your sleep hormone melatonin. So yes, staring into the flickering blue light of your TV, computer, or phone screens after dark can trigger your brain to think it's still daytime. So if you're looking for a tool to enhance your sleep and well-being by naturally encouraging melatonin production, block the blue light. If this info inspires you and you want to try some of these products, go to bondcharge.com and use the code AOH15 at checkout. You'll get a sweet 15% discount from a sweet bunch of peeps who want to help you sleep better. And now, back to our combo.
It's a cumulative effect. That's one thing you learn when you're unraveling or unpeeling or taking off the padding is all of the things that are contributing and all the levels that you need to address. When I first got diagnosed, again, it was like, here's the label. So now, our medical system can fix this because they know all this stuff and they can give me something and it will go away. And that's when I was realizing, I've outsourced my health to an external entity. And, after being let down repeatedly and not having any solutions, a new gate opens where it goes, no one's going to save you. You have to.
Yeah. Oh, I just got, yes.
and
very profound message. No one's coming to save us.
No. And then it's like, okay, what does this diagnosis even mean?
Yeah.
What does this label mean?
Yeah.
Does this mean I surrender and let it take over? Does this mean, this is a collection of responses that my body's having? It's been giving a label, and I can undo those responses. I can heal those. And that's another. I find there's just levels to chronic illness. It doesn't have to remain chronic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy, and not saying it's fast, right? But
yeah. Absolutely. I'm with you. And that's been my experience as well, that we can heal. And I say this being diagnosed with a genetic disorder. So, at the DNA level, apparently, my body, my being is different or whatever, not how it's supposed to be, whatever all that means. But I still believe I can heal. And
quick technical question for you. So I also got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos. I had to travel to Alberta to see someone about it. But
I'm pretty sure I know who it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And in my province, when I came back with the diagnosis, I was told that they were no longer doing any genetic testing for Ehlers-Danlos. And then I said, so then how do I know that I have Ehlers-Danlos? Well, you have this collection of symptoms. If anything, I've just learned to take it with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
Like, okay, that's so what? Now what?
Yes.
It's not going to become my identity. It's not going to become my handicap. It's not going to become any of this stuff. And that whisper that we've spoken about, it is a present voice now. It is like, no, yes, it's the same level volume. It's so quick now, as I said, and that's another gift, getting older, all the breadcrumbs connecting, you start to go, I know what no feels like. I know what yes feels like now. And, you just get empowered with that. And if that's one thing I think we all need to do is to really sit and go, what is yes in my body? Like, how do I identify that? What is no?
What are the sensations of yes?
Yeah. Yeah. And then because that helps you make choices for your life that don't pad you up again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so with you on this. And one thing I just want to mention is, so when I was first diagnosed, I was 36. So I had lived, a good chunk of my life without a diagnosis and had things going on in my body that indicated something was going on. So when I was diagnosed, I felt vindicated, like,
absolutely.
I knew it.
Totally.
I knew it. Right. And this is a common experience for people with chronic and rare illness, is that feeling of vindication. And I did need to sit in that for a while. Like I absolutely did. To the point
Absolutely.
where I tattooed a zebra on
Oh,
my
yeah, there it is.
wrist. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Ehlers-Danlos, let's say mascot is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
zebra. It's a zebra. Whereas you
Yeah.
have like people with trigeminal neuralgia, it's a lightning bolt because that's a nervous system condition. And then you've got the Lymies, which are the the Lyme disease people
Right.
who quite often use a
Five
tick,
rows of
and
butterfly. Yeah.
that's
Oh,
disgusting.
okay.
I just like, no, thank you. Like, I don't need my abuser.
Home and-
But yeah, just so for those who don't know, yes, I think there's a little quote that goes with it.
Yeah.
It was the specialist who said, if the doctor should be saying to you, if it looks and sounds like a horse, maybe it's a zebra. Is that
Yeah.
the
If it
quote?
has four legs and goes
That's what
clip
it is.
clop. Yeah. If
Yeah.
it has four legs and goes clip clop. Well, so physicians are most often trained. If it has four legs and goes clip clop, assume it's a horse because it usually is. But sometimes if it has four legs and goes clip clop, it's a zebra. So to think
Yeah.
zebra, So
Yeah.
yeah, EDS
That's
has
where it
adopted
comes from.
That's
Yeah.
where it comes from. Yeah, and so when I was diagnosed, I really needed to allow myself to steep in that identity of EDS, rare disease. This is my label. This is who I am. I needed to do that because I had been gaslit by others, by self, whatever, for my whole life. So I
Totally.
really needed to adopt that identity. But I shifted. I shifted. I still like zebras, so it's fine. I can hide it. I can talk about it, whatever. It's not on my face. But I mean, and it is still part of my identity.
Oh, exactly. It's part of your
It is still
journey.
part of my identity. It's still part of my journey. It's part of my
For
story
sure.
and my soul awakening. But I
Yeah.
don't identify as strongly with it now because that's often a place of, I say this with love. I say this with love. It's from a place of victim,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
that they shouldn't have done that to me. They should have listened to me. They shouldn't, like, here I am. This is what I actually have. I can now scream this back at you. You need to give me XYZ. Yeah. I say that with love. And I say that having been there myself.
I completely relate. I completely relate and understand. And so much so that I have a hesitancy of even sharing information about certain conditions because I don't want to identify. Like, I am not these conditions. These are symptoms and responses in my body, but I've just happened to be occupying this body. And
Right?
these are the things happening. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. When it first happened to me, I was like, I've got Lyme. Now I know.
Yeah.
Now I know down the road. Doesn't matter.
Right.
But when I recognize that in other people when they discovered they had a Lyme diagnosis, and this sense of relief and identity and all this kind of stuff, and now I recognize and have space for that part of their journey, that I'm not going to go, hey, just so you know, you can heal yourself, because it's like the worst thing you could do is like, oh, it's all in your mind. Yeah. Oh, it's in your mind. You just have to think positive. And it's like, great. Thanks.
Yeah. There's a timing for these messages.
Totally. And how do you, as a coach and a therapist and everything, how are you able to recognize? I mean, I'm sure now you've done it for so long that you can recognize the stages that people are at in their healing. And so you would just have to carefully, like you said, I say this with love, because you hear that's coming from victim place. There's like a, ooh, having to go, okay, where am I victimizing myself?
Yeah.
And how is that serving me? Yeah.
Yeah. Because to move out of that victim, to kind of loop back what we were talking about before, to move out of that victim, it's the recognition that no one is here to save us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in a victim, it's oh, well, this person did this thing to us. They should have or shouldn't have, whatever. Yeah. So there's this power dynamic with this other person, doctor, government, whoever it is, right? And the expectation that they should look after us.
Yeah.
So moving out of victim means recognizing there's no one here to look after us.
Yeah.
That's a freaking scary place to be. Yeah. Government's actually not here to look after us. Healthcare is not actually, like, we need to look after us. We're the only one that's actually going to save us.
No one is going to make the decision as to what food you're putting in your mouth, what supplements you're taking to support yourself. And we're raised in a system that we were to trust and believe. Only one system, and that the government and all of that kind of stuff too. And it's been a huge service to us. What's happened in the last 3 years to those people who go, wait a minute, I'm responsible for how well my body is. And it's given power back to so many people and woken a lot of people up to being like, oh yeah, I do have to take care of myself because there are things out there that I have to be cautious about. So just looking through my questions, because we have covered a lot of my questions, but like this, like a typical female, typical female brain. Yeah, we've just been. So a lot of the conditions that we're talking about here, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, Ehlers-Danlos, central sensitivity disorder, trigeminal neuralgia, these are conditions that can have invisible symptoms, and therefore they're known as invisible disabilities. Quite often, those afflicted can experience a lot of shame just due to the lack of awareness and understanding of these conditions and how they present. They can face a lot of criticism from friends, from family, from doctors, coworkers, or just society in general, who just don't believe in their symptoms because they can't see them. If they can't see them, it must not be there. Would you have any suggestions for those who do experience this?
The shame of invisibility?
Yes.
Just sit with that for a moment. What's coming up to me, we'll see where it goes, but what's coming up to me is, the need to be accepted by others. And that is, survival for us as humans. We are social beings. We need communities to survive. So there's some degree of, so it's a need. It is a survival need to belong. And it seems that we have evolved to feel this need to belong everywhere all the time and always accepted and always belonging, and everyone always needs to understand and accept us. That's not the truth of our existence. We're not always going to be accepted everywhere by everyone and understood.
That's exhausting.
And so what's most important, it is exhausting. We just can't. And especially with like the global reach that we have into different communities, different countries, there's no way we can be accepted everywhere. And so I think letting go of that expectations, we're not going to be accepted everywhere. Coming into contact with the need, the primal need to be accepted and have a sense of belonging to some degree. And then also accepting that we're not going to be accepted everywhere. So, if someone doesn't believe me now, if someone looks at me and says, you don't have blankety blank, you look just fine, it doesn't poke me in the same way that it used to. Because I don't need them to understand my experience. I know the truth of my experience. So really, I think what I'm getting to is this self-validation, the self-belief, the self-connection, right? Believing what is happening in heart, body, and soul, validating it, not betraying self. And so when we do that, when we're believing and validating ourselves, we aren't as dependent on others to do it. Yeah, that's what's coming up.
So the masking is like a self-invalidation.
It can be, but, we can mask. I even say this about, some of the padding, whether it's social media, alcohol, Nutella, whatever it is. I think what really shifts the experience of, when we disconnect from self is the conscious intention. How conscious are we? I am putting on this scarf today so I look well, so that when I go to the doctor, whatever, so that when I go to this meeting, so that, I'm consciously, I know body, I know you're not feeling so well, right? So validate, I know you're not feeling so well. I'm not denying what you're feeling. And to feel safe in the world, I need to put this scarf on right now so I show up in a certain way in this, meeting or whatever. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
And so like even reaching for the, whatever it is. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. I can't sleep. My phone's beside the bed. okay, I know I'm reaching for this phone right now because I want to distract from this discomfort within myself.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I mean, I think reaching for the numbing or the masking isn't inherently bad and shouldn't ever be done. I think it's the conscious intentionality. And to also ensure that we're spending those quiet moments, that we're spending those very real, raw moments with everything that's there and
Mm-hmm.
allowing it to be there and recognizing that all the feelings belong.
Have you ever just been sitting somewhere and all of a sudden you're down a rabbit hole on Instagram and you're like, what just how did that happen? Have you ever been that just
Yeah, yeah,
not present, and then you're
yeah.
just like, why did I?
How did I get
Yeah,
here?
yeah, exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah,
those apps are designed to support that addiction.
yeah,
I mean, it's immediately as soon as you get on there, it's like,
yeah,
look at this thing, look at that, and
yeah.
clickbait and all that kind of stuff.
Just to not stay with anything too long. And that, I think that's what ails our society, is that we don't stay with our feelings of discomfort,
Yeah.
And so then we're not adept to know what to do with them, and it becomes a cumulative effect. And I think we've seen this over the last few decades. I see it more in, my kids' generation than in our generation, that there isn't a familiar, like there's just so much heightened sensitivity because people
Mhm.
don't know how to sit and follow through with a
Mhm.
feeling of anger, with a feeling of shame, with a feeling of whatever it is. They don't know how to stay with it and see it through to the end because they're numbing it. They're cutting it off. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
and
then,
just that even not being able to debate, have disagreement.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's like we can't feel discomfort at all. If I feel
right?
discomfort, you're attacking me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah. It
guess,
becomes so
yeah,
fragile
yeah.
because we don't sit
Interesting.
with the emotions and see them through. See them to
Yeah.
completion within the self. And so I think, that combined with the looking to outside people to validate us. So when we're not validating us and we don't know how to be with our own emotions, which is of course related. Yeah, there's no space for debate or disagreement.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Let's just check the list here and see what else
Yeah.
we've got going on. One of the factors that drew me to working with the specialists that I work with is that they come at it with 5 levels of healing. So the
Mm.
physical, the energy body, the realm of the psyche and
Mhm.
spirit, the transpersonal level, connection to source, all this. And so my intuition was that I had to have a multi-layered approach. When I first got, say, the Lyme diagnosis, I was like, they were just like, here's some antibiotics. And my whisper was like, no, don't do that.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
didn't. And I sought out this other group of people. And one of their takes is that, if we can deal with the higher levels and process these emotions or these traumas, that quite often the physical will reduce or
Yeah.
subside or heal and,
Yeah.
and things like that. And
Yeah.
that's why, work that you're doing is super important, because it's also, like I said, on for me, the third level, the realm of the psyche and the spirit, that was where I was like, oh, that's where I
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so doing a lot of, I'm attracted to people like you who are like really want to get into it,
Yeah.
um, and this injury on the level, like, unresolved conflicts, childhood trauma, things like that.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about it is just even when you're a child, you don't notice that what you're experiencing may be not healthy
Mhm.
because it's all you know. It's like saying to
Mhm.
someone, "Do you have a
Mhm.
headache or a migraine?" Well, I don't know. I've never had a migraine. What's
Right?
the difference? You don't
There's no
know.
frame of reference in this body, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's important to be able to examine those years of your life and see how they possibly are impacting your physical health.
Mhm,
Any
mhm.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you with the multi-layer approach, and that was, certainly my experience of healing, and I don't use the word healing saying I'm done. I think it's a
Mhm,
continual
mhm,
experience until the soul leaves this body, but that it is all connected. heart, body, spirit. It is all connected. And, often people with chronic illness will, they've been told, oh, it's all in your head, right? And maybe it was to dismiss, or maybe the message was delivered too soon, but the reality, I believe, in my experience, from what I've observed in the world, is that it is all connected. We can't take the head, the right away from the rest of the body. It's not like emotions are here and like the symptoms are, no, we also know a lot about the gut and its role in emotions. And so no, it is all connected. We can't silo ourselves off. And so this is for our emotional being, our physical being, and I'm also our spiritual being. So I think any truly effective healing modality needs to consider all, I've categorized them kind of as the three, but that full integrated approach. Neglecting one or the other, it's not going to quite get you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it may for a short term. Like I noticed some people, they'll be able to treat something and then it will manifest in another form, or in a more dominating way than it was. Like it was subtle, and then it was, oh, I dealt with that for now. And then it gets bigger and
like
bigger.
Whack-a-mole.
Totally. I don't know if you can speak to this, but do you have any thoughts on navigating chronic illness in intimate partnerships? It's a lot to be in a relationship with someone who has chronic illness when there seems to be another entity in the relationship, and that is the dis-ease.
So definitely, as we've talked about, that piece around validation, so in intimate partnership, well, really in any human connection, but especially intimate partnership, we want to be seen, heard, and understood. And when living with chronic illness, if partner is not having the same experience, it can be really hard for them to see, hear, and understand. Well, at least understand. It can be hard for them to understand. They can probably still see and hear it, but it can be hard for them to understand. And so can we release that need to be understood? Like we were talking about before, like not everyone is going to understand and accept us all the time. Can we release that need in intimate partnership? It's tricky. It's tricky. And my personal experience with this was, I really needed to be seen, heard, and understood. I didn't feel that. And this combined with a few other issues, led to my separation. I've grown since then. And now in intimate partnership, I don't have the same need to be understood. I just kind of accept that this is not their lived experience. It's mine, but they might not understand it. Can they be compassionate? Can they be empathetic? Yeah, but do they actually need to really understand it? They can't really. And also the recognition of, the fears that it could bring up around, oh gosh, if that person can experience that, then I might too. Or how can I support this person? I don't feel skilled enough, or a lot of it is their own fear. That's actually nothing to do with us. With a lot of human interaction, right? It has nothing to do with us. It's more about them. It's more about me than the other person, right? So that's just kind of what's coming to the surface now is, that need for validation. Can we loosen the grip on it a little bit? And I think one of the ways to do that is by validating self, validating compassion for self. Because when we have filled our own cup, we don't need it as much from others.
Yeah. Exactly.
Those are just some surface level thoughts that were coming up on that.
No, that's great. And that's probably a whole other podcast. So thank you for even attempting to venture into that. Do you have any go-to pull out of your pocket quick techniques for, there are some days that are pretty dark when it comes to chronic illness. I have some go-tos for myself, but I'd love to hear what you have.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Nutella?
So many, right? I'm sure you do too. Your toolbox must be really full. So is mine. It's very simple. It is very simple. One of my go-tos is using jargon terms as affective labeling. So what that just means is naming feelings. Right? And look at this. I even have this on a pillow here.
Oh, I heard about this.
Oh, the feeling meal pillow.
Where did you get that pillow? Do you know where you got that?
Your website. I could try to dig it up. So I think it was on in Australia.
Yeah, I'd love to put that in the show notes.
And what's so good about this, and you might already know this, but for your listeners who may not, what's so good about affective labeling is when we really discern, like rather than just saying, I'm depressed. Well, depressed is not actually a feeling, it's a diagnosis. So what is the feeling within that, right? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling that. And so like when we really distill what the actual emotional experience is, our nervous system says, thank you. You heard me. Right.
Totally.
And right. So it can stop sending the alarm bells of this is what's happening. You need to listen. When we actually hear it and get precise with it, we validate ourselves. We feel seen, heard, and understood by self. And that actually turns down the volume of this messenger of whatever the feeling is, right? Lonely.
And
right?
you've got children. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that pillow has come in handy.
A lot. And there's no shame.
So I love that.
And then that's the thing, we get conditioned that certain, like living right back to the beginning, we get conditioned to believe that certain feelings are okay and not okay. And so, this feeling of anger is coming out. Oh, squash it. Not okay to feel it. Right. And so why are you feeling nothing? Right. Well, yeah. So when we can actually name the feeling that we're feeling, it settles the alarm bell. Right? We actually start to feel that less intensely. It actually soothes our nervous system, because what our nervous system also wants, and we didn't touch on nervous system much today, but it's something I'm super passionate about. What nervous system wants when we're in that crisis state. So when we can give it certainty and accurately name what we're actually feeling, it says, thank you. Right? And it can start to soothe. Yeah. So that's definitely a go-to. Like, so go-to, it's on a pillow behind my back. Like, it's a go-to.
Exactly. And you know what? It's so simple, but I don't use that. I don't use that as one of my tools. So thank you. Do you have more?
Okay. So I kind of categorize I don't love the word intervention. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like the practices. Yeah. I kind of categorize them into 3 categories. Emotions or heart, body or sensations, and then soul. And sometimes there's a little bit of overlap, but just this one is kind of like a heart, body. This is the heart, emotion practice. Some body practices are, feeling the sensation and naming the sensation, right?
Yeah.
And so noticing, like doing a body scan, and I could go on and on about body scans. I haven't always loved them. Can't say that there's still a part of me that really doesn't. When we get in touch with the sensations in our body, they're just messengers for us. They're just messengers for us. And so can we notice the sensation for the bare sensation? So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Vipassana meditation. But okay. So that's something I've practiced it in quite a bit. And so, noticing the sensation for the bare sensation and not attaching all the, I don't want to say it's not true, but but not attaching all the stories, right? It's not that the stories are untrue. We're not judging if the stories are true or untrue. But so let's say, okay, I have a throbbing sensation in my hip, which happens lots. Right? Throbbing, stabbing, stinging. I try to be precise with what it is, not just label it pain.
Right.
Throbbing, it's stinging, it's pulsing, whatever it is, getting very specific. Because again, my body will say, thank you for noticing the specific sensation. And then I endeavor to not bring in the story of, what does this mean? Totally. What does this mean? Am I bedbound today? Can I not go for this walk today? Am I going to need a hip replacement? Am I going to be in a wheelchair by the time I'm 50? Like I just notice the sensation. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the body practices that I bring in.
Yeah. Those 2 alone. That's so helpful. People who have chronic pain, and depending on the sensation, like you said, it's that, now I'm able to recognize there's very distinct responses. And it's like, is that the sting? Is that the burn? Is that the pinch? Because each one of those things, I know methods to release them. I can feel that pulling. That means I need to roll my back. I can feel this sense, you know what I mean? And so I love that, just that being really specific.
You say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good. Your lived experience with chronic illness is such a gift to us. So thanks for going through it. Because now we can benefit from your struggle. Yeah. I want to wrap up with you Do you have a book that you may recommend with the topics that we've been talking about? I'm all about reading all these books. And so I'm an avid reader and I love to share book things because also some people don't feel comfortable with therapy. Some people can't afford it. Some people, there's a stigma around it. And it's like, if you can just get a book, anything that you would like to share that you think might be beneficial for people with chronic illness.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, it's same. I'm the same. Yeah, voracious
Where do you
reader. I
start?
cannot get enough. I'm surrounded. So yeah, I love my books, and it's the wisdom of people who have gone on the journey before me, right? And so when you thank me for having gone on this journey, I have people to thank who went on this journey, and I have learned from. So I mean, there are so many good ones, but just sitting down to talk with you today, the one that I pulled out, and it's one that I often pull out, is No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's this premise of, in order to experience the light, we must be in the dark. And that's been my lived experience with chronic illness and other life experiences is, I had to be in the dark to see my own light. And life exists in contrast. We can't really know one without the other. We can't really know without. And I think of, compassion and suffering. If we don't know suffering, do we know compassion? If we do, they go hand in hand. Grief and joy, they go hand in hand. We don't know grief, can we really know joy, and vice versa. So so the book speaks about that, and not specific to chronic illness, but so many of the teachings there are
for sure
applicable because when we're living with chronic illness, we have a lot of experiences in the dark, right?
Well, and the thing is most people actually do have chronic illness. They just haven't been able to,
right?
They haven't been yelled at yet, but they're reaching it.
They'll haven't turned into screams. Yeah.
They haven't reached the tipping point, but it'll come.
It'll come.
And then I want to let people know where they can find you. Your website, please.
Yeah. So, right now I'm practicing both as a psychotherapist and as a coach. So, my psychotherapy practice is compaticounseling.com. Yeah, compati is Latin for compassion. And so that work is a little bit different than my work with coaching clients. My coaching website is alanajoynewton.com. So the difference in the work is, coaching clients will come to me kind of at this very specific point in their journey. Yeah, where the mind, body, soul connections are all kind of culminating for them and they're starting to have this awakening. They're ready to make some changes and they might or might not, but usually have a pretty good understanding of some of their past stuff that led them to this point. Therapy clients, maybe not, maybe still kind of gaining more awareness and insight and compassion for what their past experiences have been. And maybe not quite at that tipping point of spiritual awakening. And that's cool. I'm not going to drag them there if that's not where they're going in this lifetime. So at compaticounseling.com is my therapy practice and alanajoynewton.com is my coaching practice. I work individually and in groups. Don't have any groups at this time, but I'm on the brink of launching an online course.
Right.
Which addresses many of these components that we talked about, the reconnection with heart, body, and soul. And so guiding through these practices and exercises to get that reconnection, to reconnect. Yeah.
So a person could purchase the online course and work through that on their own, or is there a community aspect of that
There's
as well?
a community, because that is such an important part of this experience is, connection. So there's an online community and there are weekly coaching calls with me. So it's done within community. Yeah.
And could people organize their own group? Like say you had 5 friends and you all want to work on the same thing. Can they work through that course and work with you privately? Is that an option? Just asking. You haven't made it an option yet.
I mean, I'm flexible literally and figuratively.
Yes. EDS folks.
That's something I'm open to talking about. Yeah, because I mean, really my purpose here is to serve. I'm here to help others and I am adaptable. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my friend, I think we've really done it this last hour. So thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, we've talked before. I knew it was going to go. I still have probably 7 pages of questions, but obviously I'm not going to go on. We covered a lot. I just want to thank you for the wisdom that you've gained from this journey that you've been on, that you've been, listening to your guides, and that you've come to this place where you can use all of that knowledge and wisdom to help people like me. And yeah, just thank you so much for taking the time. And I can't wait to work with you.
Yeah. And thank you for taking the time and listening to that. Perhaps it was a whisper, or it was louder than a whisper, to reach out to me. I really appreciated that. And yeah, and I'm, I think of, in my work as a counselor and as a coach, I think of, it's a parallel journey. I'm helping my clients and they're also helping me. It's right.
Yeah.
Like it is a symbiotic relationship, and I don't have the answers for anyone's life. I can, hold their hand and shine some lights in some areas, but I just have so much belief in people's inherent wisdom so that they don't outsource their wisdom to me.
Well, exactly. That's
right.
Yeah. I think that's really important as a therapist and a support person. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm going to, hopefully you will come back again, because I'm sure
we got lots more time. We got hours of conversation ahead of us here.
We're gals.
Yeah.
And that is a wrap on today's episode. It's clear that Alana's insights into our need to reconnect with our authentic selves have only just scratched the surface of her expertise. We can't wait to dive deeper into her wealth of knowledge in future episodes, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with your friends and family. For show notes, transcripts, and more, visit our website at alchemyofhealing.ca. Until our paths cross again, stay resilient and keep laughing, folks. It's the best medicine we've got.